My name is Amara. I'm 77 years old, and I need to tell you something tonight that took me most of my life to understand. Something that could have saved me decades of wandering, decades of searching, decades of that terrible feeling of being lost, even when I knew exactly where I was standing. You know that feeling, don't you? That feeling of going through the motions but not knowing why, of achieving things that were supposed to make you happy but feeling empty when you got them, of looking at your life from the outside and thinking this looks fine, so why does it feel so wrong? I lived with that feeling for more than 50 years, 50 years of feeling lost. 50 years of searching for something I couldn't name. 50 years of ignoring the one thing that could have guided me home. And tonight, I want to tell you what that thing is, because I don't want you to spend 50 years like I did, because the answer was always there, right in front of me, inside of me. I just couldn't see it, because I had been taught to ignore it. The thing you're ignoring is your inner voice, your intuition, that quiet knowing that lives beneath all the noise of your thoughts. That gentle pull that tries to guide you toward what's right for you. That whisper that says, this isn't your path, or yes, this is where you belong. You feel lost because you've stopped listening to it, or maybe you never learned how to listen in the first place. Maybe, like me, you were taught that this voice wasn't trustworthy, that it was just feelings, just emotions, just something irrational that needed to be overridden by logic, by reason, by what other people told you was right. Let me tell you how I learned to ignore my inner voice, because this is important. These patterns don't come from nowhere. They're taught, they're absorbed. They become so deeply ingrained that we don't even know we have them. I grew up in an environment where my feelings were constantly questioned, where my instincts were dismissed, where I was told that I didn't really feel what I felt, that I didn't really know what I knew. When I said I didn't like something, I was told I was being difficult. When I said something felt wrong, I was told I was being dramatic. When I said I wanted something different, I was told I was being ungrateful. And slowly, piece by piece, I learned to distrust myself. I learned that my inner voice was unreliable, that it led me astray, that the only safe thing to do was to ignore it and listen to what others said instead. And so I built a life based on external guidance. I made decisions based on what I thought I should do, what was expected, what would make others happy, what looked right from the outside. And every time I did this, every time I ignored that quiet voice inside that said, this isn't right for you, I moved a little further from myself, a little further from my own truth, a little further into that feeling of being lost that would become the background of my entire existence. The thing about ignoring your inner voice is that it doesn't just go away. It keeps speaking. It keeps trying to reach you. But when you ignore it long enough, it gets quieter. It gets buried under layers of should and must and what will people think. And eventually, you can barely hear it at all. And that's when the feeling of being lost becomes unbearable. Because you're not just lost in the world, you're lost to yourself. You've disconnected from the only guidance system that could ever truly lead you where you need to go. And no amount of external direction can replace that. No amount of advice from others, no amount of following the rules. Nothing outside of you can tell you what's right for you. Only that voice inside knows. And you've stopped listening. If something in what I'm saying is reaching you, if you're beginning to recognize your own disconnection from yourself, I want you to know that this recognition is everything. It's the first step home. And if this message is showing you something you needed to see, perhaps you'll want to stay close to this space. Return when you need reminding, because these words will be here, waiting for you. I remember the moment when I realized what I had been doing to myself. I was in my late 50s. I had built what looked like a successful life. I had done what I was supposed to do. I had made choices that seemed responsible and sensible and right. And I was miserable, deeply, profoundly miserable. And one day, sitting alone in my house, I asked myself a question I had never asked before. When did I stop knowing who I was? And the answer came immediately from somewhere deep inside. You never stopped knowing, you just stopped listening. That answer broke something open in me because I realized that all those years of feeling lost, all those years of searching outside myself for direction, all of it came from one simple thing. I had learned to distrust my own inner knowing. I had learned to override my own instincts. I had learned to dismiss that quiet voice that had been trying to guide me all along. And in doing so, I had abandoned myself. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually, day by day, decision by decision, until I was so far from my own truth that I couldn't find my way back. But here's what I discovered next, and this is the part I want you to hear most clearly. The voice never left. It was still there, buried, quiet, almost inaudible under all the noise, but still there, still waiting, still ready to guide me home if I was willing to listen. And when I started listening, really listening, everything began to change. I started small. I started noticing. When something felt wrong in my body, I paid attention instead of dismissing it. When something felt right, I acknowledged it instead of questioning it. When a decision was in front of me, I paused and asked, not what should I do, but what feels true. And slowly, like a muscle that had atrophied from disuse, my connection to my inner voice began to strengthen. It got louder, clearer, more confident. And as it did, the feeling of being lost began to fade. Not because my external circumstances changed. They didn't, not at first. But because I was no longer navigating without a compass. I had found my compass again. I had found myself. You see, that's what the inner voice really is. It's not just intuition. It's not just gut feeling. It's your connection to yourself, to your deepest truth, to what you actually want and need and know, beneath all the conditioning, beneath all the expectations, beneath all the voices that aren't yours. And when you're connected to that, you can't be truly lost. Even if you don't know where you're going, even if the path isn't clear, even if everything around you is uncertain. You're not lost because you're with yourself. You know yourself. You trust yourself. And that's the only ground you really need. The reason you feel lost is not because you've taken wrong turns. It's not because you've made bad decisions. It's not because something is wrong with you. The reason you feel lost is because you've disconnected from the only guidance that matters, from your own inner knowing, from that voice that has been trying to speak to you your entire life. And the way home is not through more searching outside yourself, not through more advice, not through more trying to figure it out with your mind. The way home is through listening, through getting quiet enough to hear what has always been there, through trusting what you find when you do. I want to ask you something now. When was the last time you truly listened to yourself? Not your thoughts, not your fears, not the voice in your head that repeats what others have told you, but that deeper voice, that quiet knowing, that sense of rightness or wrongness that lives in your body, not your mind. When did you last honor what it said? When did you last make a decision based on what felt true rather than what seemed logical or expected or safe? If you can't remember, that's okay. Most of us can't. We've been trained out of it. But the training can be undone. The connection can be restored. The voice is still there, waiting for you to listen. Before we part tonight, I want to know something. Where are you listening from right now? And what did this message stir in you? What part of yourself have you been ignoring? I ask because sometimes naming it is the first step to reclaiming it. And because knowing you're not alone in this can be the beginning of finding your way back. I'm 77 years old now. I live in a small temple surrounded by trees that never doubt themselves. They grow toward the light. They don't question whether they should. They don't ask permission. They don't override their nature to please others. They simply are what they are. And I've learned from them. I've learned to listen again, to trust again, to let that inner voice guide me, even when it doesn't make logical sense, even when others don't understand, even when it's scary. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that I am no longer lost. Not because I know where I'm going, but because I know who I am. And that's enough. That's everything. And it's available to you too. The moment you stop ignoring what you've always known.